Because the ULO didn't exist, unlike most of the other sites, the steering group and ECDP needed to find out who could step into the breach and make this happen. And as a process, it was faultless. There was a really clear documentation, there was a clear process, presentations, forms, all the rest of it. But there was something very difficult for us about the expression of interest process, because while that part, the process, was very clear, the outcome was rather vague, and it felt as if we were involved in a hurdle race, and we got to the very last hurdle without having any idea whatsoever what was on the other side, whether it was the rest of the track and the finish line, or whether it was a bottomless pit. In part, that's because in a conventional expression of interest process or a tendering process, you know what it is that's going to be provided or was being asked for, and you know what sum of money is there to do it. And in this case, it was for providers, partners, organisations, individuals to come up with what could be done. But there was never any money on the table, really. And while a number of people banded various figures around, actually what may be available is vastly less than the figure that anybody was mentioning.
If we'd worked that out earlier on, we might have scoped something out that was going to be smaller in the initial stages, and then once it started to deliver, build a credibility, would then grow organically, rather than expect people to come in and fund something quite big from day one that had absolutely no track record of delivery. We sort of had our action plan about how we were going to do it. We had a kind of sense and hope that it was going to work, but we didn't perhaps think about the realities of when it did work, how we were going to then move on. It was incredibly important that we engaged with stakeholders. So we had a launch event that wasn't in the original project, but it was clear very early on that we were going to need that because we would need Cambridgeshire to take ownership of the project. So we rapidly got together through a snowball kind of mechanism, individual names and organisations, and wrote to them and said, we are looking to develop this project, we want you to be involved, come to this event, hear about it and see if you want to get involved. So that very quickly got the principal players involved in a room talking about the project. It was really important for them to see actually the faces behind the names and to get a degree of confidence actually what we were about and what we were trying to achieve, and actually we were in it for Cambridgeshire, not for Essex. And that helped in terms of all the communication that followed, because we were able to have the conversation with them, and an emerging conversation and a maturing conversation that said, actually, your organisation and this new organisation can coexist. Actually, it's really important that they do. They bring different things, and actually they can complement each other, and it can be a win-win for both your organisations.
One of the challenges, I think, for us all has been a mutating political environment within Cambridge. There have been a turnover in staff. Some really good people have been very critical to the process starting off, have moved on, and it's felt as if the concept of work around the ULO has dropped down the political agenda somewhat. At the same time as self-directed support is trying to be moved forward by the county. So there's been a huge amount on people's plates. And
we didn't deal with a political plan. We didn't manage the politics around who was going to influence the county council, the Department of Health, local health providers and so on. And I think that we, as a project steering group, rather left it to ECDP, then ECDP left it to us because we were on the ground. And I think a political plan would have at least addressed that issue, and it fell between two stools. So I would advise that a political plan, with a small p, but influencing councillors, those who actually make the decisions as to how money should be spent would have been really helpful.
So this is not about in it for money. You have to absolutely buy into the concept that disabled people, which is the organisation you're creating, absolutely have to have a central voice, and the whole thing is around how you enable that to happen rather than creating a business.